as always. Before we get to your analysis and understanding about more war coming, the IRGC reports, and Al Jazeera backs it up with two eyewitnesses, that Iranian missiles struck a U.S. warship near Jask, Jask island, right outside the Strait of Hormuz. What do we know about this?
Well, that's the extent of what we know. We haven't heard any statement out of the White House or the Pentagon yet refuting that. But you know, when Trump announced yesterday this Project Freedom, you know, I was certain that they were going to try to run some ships through there. I don't know. It's probably a destroyer. They talked about missile-guided destroyers being used, but normally those are accompanying a carrier strike group. They provide the security, air defense function for a carrier strike group. So when you start pulling them off for a mission like this, which I would call a suicide mission, because it's not. This isn't a simple matter that you've got Iranian artillery pieces on shore, fixed sites that can be seen, and all you have to do is destroy those, and then voila, it's open. The Iranians have a multi-layered defense system in place that consists of everything from mini submarines with torpedoes, underwater drones, mines, surface drones, aerial drones, coastal defense cruise missiles, and strategic missiles. And all of that is, some of that's on the shore, some of it's 100 miles inland. So the only way to, quote, secure freedom of navigation would be to eliminate all of that. Well, we can't. On paper, you might say, oh, we could if we got like a 2 million man army and we landed and we went and took it. Yeah, but that's just fantasy. So the United States does not have the military capability of opening the Strait of Hormuz. It's a fool's errand.
The Central Command denied that the ship was hit, but this was before Al Jazeera's eyewitnesses. Are they still persisting in this denial?
Yeah, let's see. The laundry room that caught on fire and burned for 30 hours, nothing to see there. We got this mysterious fire on board another destroyer that burned and knocked out his navigation system. No, those Iranians aren't doing anything to us. Yeah, look, the amount of spin and lies coming out of Central Command is just astonishing. I think if Al Jazeera and the reporting eyewitnesses, I think we'd go with them.
Trump got very aggravated last Friday when Chancellor MERS said the Iranians have humiliated the United States. I'm not a fan of the German chancellor, but his statement was correct.
Yeah. And
this continues.
Well, what it's exposing is the limits of U.S. military power. Our entire military system is structured to operate in a 20th century environment. And what I mean by that is in the 20th century, our aircraft carriers didn't have to worry about the threat of hypersonic missiles and drones. They could fly close to the coast of a potential adversary, and if that adversary flew planes at us, we had a reasonable chance of shooting down those planes. That's no longer the case. Between the combination of drones, conventional cruise missiles, and now hypersonic missiles, these aircraft carriers are sitting ducks. Similarly with our troops, we used to be able, as we did 23 years ago, we deployed 165,000 to Iraq, and they arrived in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. We were able to get rested and refit and ready for the invasion. They didn't have to worry about getting hit with drones and short-range ballistic missiles. They do now. Now you can know the world has changed, that you can no longer assemble a force overseas in one location in hopes of them being secure. They're very insecure. And then we're learning about the limits of what our air power can do. You compare how much ordnance the Russians have dropped on Ukraine over the course of the last 4 years and 2 months. It's an enormous amount. And Ukraine is a country that's about a third the size of Iran. And Russia's done significant damage to a variety of systems and infrastructure, but it hasn't caused the defeat of Ukraine. The United States, in comparison, has done only a pinprick, and we've already discovered we're running out of weapons. So, unlike the Russians, who were able to flip on an industrial production system, turn out artillery shells, turn out Kinzhal missiles, the United States can't. And so the other thing that's being exposed here is that the longer Iran resists, the more weapons we expend without being able to replenish them, the weaker we become. It's pretty ironic.
Larry, are you telling me that the Pentagon wasted money on 20th century equipment, which doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, well, not only that, look at the latest. They finally have come out. They claim they got the Dark Eagle, which is our version of a hypersonic missile. Apparently it only travels at like Mach 5. So it's like half the speed of what Russia and China field, and I think Iran. But it comes to you for the low price of $41 million per missile. Per missile. The
Wow.
Russian Kinzhal reportedly costs about $6 million. So we've produced a hypersonic missile that is 8 times more expensive and 1/2 the speed of Russian hypersonic missiles. What an accomplishment.
Wow. Are the Iranians capable of controlling the strait?
Yes, so absolutely. The thing so many U.S. Pundits have commented on, they call it international waters. It's not international waters. It's Iran's territorial waters, 12 miles out. I think the strait is total 23 miles wide. So the other half is controlled by Oman. So that's why Iran is coordinating with Oman on, okay, how are we going to divide this up so that all the ships that come in and out of here, they're going to have to pay a cover charge. You're going to come into the Persian Gulf, you got to pay us. The United States doesn't like that, but there's nothing the United States can do to stop that.
Is it true that the U.S. Navy is actually escorting ships through the strait or attempting to?
They've made that claim for one ship so far. The Iranians say, nope, that hasn't happened. We've seen more often than not, the claims the United States have made have turned out to be false, like with the blockade. They keep touting, oh man, we're doing a massive blockade. Okay, how many actual ships have been stopped, boarded, seized, and then steered to a port where we're under, it's under our control? I think the number is less than 5, whereas more than 150 ships since the announcement of that blockade on April 15th, more than 150 ships have transited the Strait of Hormuz coming out, headed for overseas. So again, it's a charade that's being played out by the Trump administration. But because the bottom line is the United States does not have enough ships to conduct what they call vessel boarding, search and seizure operations. They just don't. If we mobilized every ship in the U.S. Navy and deployed it over there, yeah, we might have a chance at making a pretty good dent and stopping maybe 50%, but we're lucky right now if we're stopping 3%.
I had an interesting conversation a little while ago with our friend and colleague Alistair Crook about whether negotiations between the United States and Iran are even feasible. And of course, he points out that in negotiations, you have to have some respect for the sovereignty of the other country.
Right.
And B, you have to have some realistic understanding of their own national security needs. That doesn't exist here. I mean, Iran wants sanctions lifted. It wants to be left alone. The U.S., Israel wants to dismember Iran, and the U.S. wants whatever Israel wants.
Yeah, I mean, there is no path forward for negotiations yet. I believe that'll change as this the closure of the Strait of Hormuz on the 28th of February set off a ticking time bomb for the global economy. It didn't. It shuttered the Gulf so that oil, liquid natural gas, urea, helium, sulfuric acid, that stopped coming out of the Gulf. There was already a supply of that on ships headed out around the world. Those ships now have arrived at their destinations. They've unloaded. So now there is the shortage. And the shortage will become apparent with each passing day. We're already seeing in the United States, for example, that the price of gas now is surging back up. It was originally, it increased significantly during the first 3 weeks. Then the Trump administration started raiding the strategic reserve. The oil was being drawn down, and then the price stabilized. But over the course of the last 6 days, the price, I know down here in Florida, it went from $3.57 to it's now $4. So almost 43 cents in just 6 days, and it's worse in the Midwest, where they don't the oil has farther to travel to get to them. So and this is happening around the world. The aviation fuel is short, so this is the cascading effect. It's not just going to be one sector; it'll be all sectors of the economy are going to be affected, and it's under those circumstances that Trump will finally have to realize we got to bring an end to this. That we can't win militarily, and that will become apparent, and then they're going to have to look for a negotiated solution, which gets back to what President Putin is willing to help facilitate that. But Donald Trump is going to have to be willing to cooperate.
How stern do you think President Putin was with President Trump on the phone and with Prime Minister Netanyahu on the phone? I mean, would he have intimated about Russian military involvement?
No, I don't think so. One of the descriptions from Ushakov was that Putin was firm, but it was described as a friendly conversation, as opposed to saying it was a frank exchange of views. That's diplomatic speak for calling each other's, questioning the sexuality of each other's mother. Okay, yeah. So it sounded like it was a direct but polite phone call. Now, what we're seeing Trump do is he's doing the legal workaround. So according to the War Powers Act, he was supposed to go back to Congress, and Congress on Friday had to say, okay, you got to pull the troops out or we're going to approve going forward. But he said, oh, no, the war is over. It's over. We're done. Operation Epic Fury, great success.
Or we'll just give it a new name.
Yeah, well, that's it. But now we got this new project, Project Freedom. And it just so happens we already have the military forces there. So we're going to task him to do that. This is going to do is restart the 60-day clock.
Actually, in my view, it doesn't even restart the 60-day clock. The 60-day clock began with the introduction of military force. That's the phrase in the statute. A pause in shooting, in killing, has nothing to do with a delay. There's no way that there's a delay built into the statute. He can do whatever he wants. Now, that's one side of this. The other side of this is the courts are not going to hear this. Yeah. This is a political statement Trump's making, and the Congress is supine. They'll roll over and do whatever he wants.
Look, you're just trying to be logical and rational. Stop that. This has nothing to do with logic and rationality in the law. This is Donald Trump. He comes up with this clever idea, or I'm not sure who came up with it, and it depends upon the only thing that could derail it is members of the House and Senate would stand up and say, wait a minute there, cowboy, you're not going to do that. But they're not. They don't want to do that. That would require some courage and backbone. Those are in short supply up on the Hill. So I think Trump's going to get away with this. They will probably, the word coming out from I've got contacts over in Dubai, and they're saying what they're hearing that the full conflict will start on the 7th of May, which is what, this Thursday.
Right.
The United States has forward deployed a number of aircraft into the Al Dhafra airfield, which is just south of Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. So we've put military assets in place. They're not there just to put on an air show. So I think unfortunately we're headed towards a new round of conflict unless someone finally persuades Donald Trump, hey, you got to stop this.
Here's Jack Reed, Senator Reed from Rhode Island, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee. There are no timeouts like in a football game. Chris, cut number 8.
The language of the statutes does not provide for timeouts like in a football game. From the day you begin, 60 days, the president has to comply with the law. There can be a 30-day extension to 90 days, but that has to be requested by the president. We have to be notified. No such notifications come through. The president's ignoring the law. He does that constantly. This is not the first example where he just completely ignores the law. And we have to keep the pressure on. In contrast to President Trump, at least President Bush came before the United States Congress and asked for authority to conduct operations in Iraq. Now, I disagreed with that. I thought it was going to be a disastrous situation. But nevertheless, he provided Congress the opportunity to opine and decide and gave him legitimacy that this president lacks.
Senator Reed's 100% correct, Larry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, this is Congress has the ability to put a stop to this, but won't. And Trump, I think, and his administration, they're counting on the cowardice of Congress to just look the other way, not do their job. The problem that Trump's going to run into is that they can continue to try to spend this that, oh yeah, we're getting ships out, just as they have with the blockade. They got most Americans believing the blockade has been 100% effective. It hasn't, and the reason it has not is because the United States lacks the naval power to make it happen. Plus, coupled with the fact that we're afraid to get too close to the shore. So we'll see, within the next 24 hours, we're going to know if CENTCOM's going to back off, or what I think they may try to do, and maybe it's already been attempted, they're going to coordinate with one of the ships that's out there that is flagged by a country that's cooperating with the United States, that they'll set a time for it to try to move through the strait. And the United States then will put up an air cover to try to fend off any small boats that the Iranians may send out in that eventuality, or if they send out a drone. But they'll try to stage, a confrontation, and they're going to discover Iran, despite Trump's claims that Iran's navy is destroyed, it's not. And Iran still has this multi-layered defense where it can control the Strait of Hormuz. This is something that didn't exist 23 years ago. And we did the oil escort operation back in 1987, where Iran tried to close the Strait of Hormuz. They mined the Persian Gulf, but they didn't have the military power that they do now.
Didn't Trump and Netanyahu both claim back in June of 25, after the 12-day war, that the two existential threats to Israel, Iran nukes and ballistic missiles, had been obliterated?
Right.
And here we are again.
Yeah. Well, remember the Defense Intelligence Agency, the chief of that was fired because his agency had the audacity to come out and disagree with Trump, to tell the truth about what had actually been accomplished. And so that's, again, that set off this pattern of Trump firing, getting rid of generals because they will dare to tell him the truth about a matter.
You believe that heavy military escalation is imminent and could come in as soon as 3 days.
Yeah. The It's locked and loaded. As I said, as we talked with Ray on Friday, I sure hope Ray's interpretation that the warnings from President Putin may be sufficient to deter Israel and Trump from escalating. And I continue to hope that Ray is correct on that. But what we're seeing is just yesterday, yesterday, there was a big movement of military aircraft out that were on the ground in the area. They all left at the same time. We saw that same pattern back on prior to February 28th. There had been this inflow of military gear, new weapons, personnel, helicopters, etc. And like on February 27th, all these aircraft bugged out. They didn't want to be on the ground as potential targets. So we've got that kind of movement. And we've got this, as I said, at Al Dhafra in particular, they've ramped up. We've seen the Israel show up now working with the United Arab Emirates, providing it with some air defense, new air defense systems, the Iron Dome. Now, the Iron Dome is a piece of junk, but, at least it's something tangible that'll make them feel better until they get bombarded with drones and ballistic missiles. But no, I think, unfortunately, we're headed back to an intense conflict.
I love you, but of course I hope that Ray is right. Today's the 20th anniversary of his famous takedown of Donald Rumsfeld. We're going to play the full clip when Ray is on at 10 o'clock. But I got to tease the audience and you with just 30 seconds of it. Ray McGovern versus Donald Rumsfeld.
I'm Ray McGovern, a 27-year veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency and co-founder of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. I would like to compliment you on your observation that lies are fundamentally destructive of the trust that government needs to govern. A colleague of mine, Paul Pillar, who is the top agency analyst on the Middle East and on counterterrorism, accused you and your colleagues of an organized campaign of manipulation, quote.
Now,
Rumsfeld was not happy. When I interviewed him on the show that I had on Fox Business, my producers found pictures of him shaking hands with Saddam Hussein when he gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons during the war against Iran. And of course, he was furious that he hadn't been told ahead of time that those pictures are going to be put up on the screen. Whatever.
But that entire so what we're facing today is it's built on a foundation of lies, and those foundation of lies extend back 46 years. Back into 1980. It was really with the beginning of the Iranian Revolution. With the Islamic Revolution was an organic revolution, meaning, excuse me, it wasn't brought about by outsiders. It was all internal.
Right.
Excuse me. Look, I need a drink.
You're talking about the revolution in 79 when the Shah was overthrown.
Correct. And then what we did with Iraq, where we used Iraq as a proxy to attack Iran.
Right.
Providing it with precursor chemicals, biological weapons, money, and intelligence.
Right.
And Saddam was our boy.
Right.
And then we turned on him when he was no longer useful to us. We made him the face of the enemy, the face of the enemy.
According to Aaron Amate, who's done tremendous research on this, we gave Saddam the very chemicals and formula for making chemical weapons, which we have condemned in the treaty we authored that prohibits the use of chemical weapons.
Correct.
And who can you thank for that? The guy Ray took on, Donald Rumsfeld.
Well, actually, it was really a CIA project. Rummy was a tool in that. But it started with, a finding signed by Jimmy Carter back in the summer of 1980, in which the CIA was tasked to help Iraq go to war with Iran was a simple way of putting it. And in that endeavor, the CIA was tasked with getting the finances out of the Gulf Arabs. So you had Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, others helping pump money into Saddam that was going to be used against Iran. And then it escalated to the use of chemical weapons, also biological weapons. That the components for doing biological weapons was also provided. So the United States was up to its eyeballs in this, and yet we tried to pretend that this was just some minor dust up between Iraq and Iran, and we had nothing to do with it. It was just a big bald-faced lie. But that's laid the foundation for what we're dealing with now, because Iran. The key leaders in Iranian leadership positions today, Pezeshkian, Arachi, the foreign minister, Ghalibaf, the head of the legislature, and the Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei, all four of them fought in that war.
Wow.
That war shaped, they were young men. They were 18, 19, 22. The oldest one was Pezeshkian. He was in his 30s, but he was a medic. He was a doctor. But they all four fought. They all four were part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And do you think that when you have an experience like that, that stays with you? That's
Right.
still present within them today. That's what people don't understand.
Larry, great analysis, my dear friend. Terrific, terrific analysis. Thank you very much for it. If the war does start up, we'll need to call on you again before the Intelligence Community Roundtable on Friday.
Or I'll be there. You call,
Okay.
I come.